Going to talk about the learning process of operant conditioning. Before starting my lesson, I need to explain my AI disclosure statement. I used Microsoft Copilot on November 29, 2024 to generate examples for positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. What is operant conditioning? Operant conditioning, also called instrumental conditioning, is one of the three major learning conditions, the other two being classical conditioning and observational learning. Operant conditioning specifically is a learning process that uses rewards and punishments to modify behavior. And here's a chart of the three major behavioral learning: classical conditioning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. The early history of operant conditioning begins with American psychologist Edward Thorndike and his law of effect theory. The law of effect states that behavior with positive outcomes are more likely to be repeated, while behavior with negative outcomes are less likely to be repeated. The most prominent psychologist associated with the study of operant conditioning was B.F. Skinner. He is sometimes referred to as the father of operant conditioning. Skinner is widely recognized for his developing the theory and terminology surrounding operant conditioning. The first two terms I will explain are positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. First, there is positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is the act of rewarding a positive behavior in order to encourage it to happen again in the future. Some examples include 1. Complimenting someone for a job well done, such as saying, "Great work on that project, your dedication really showed." 2. Offering a treat, gift, or bonus for achieving a specific goal, like giving a child a sticker for completing their homework. 3. Announcing someone's achievements in a team meeting or posting about their success on a company bulletin board. Next, there is negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is the idea of taking away an unwanted stimulus in order to encourage good behavior. Some examples include 1. A teacher stops nagging a student once they start completing their homework on time. 2. The beeping sound in a car stops once the driver fastens their seatbelt. 3. Parents stop reminding a child to clean their room once the child starts keeping it tidy regularly. Then there is positive punishment and negative punishment. Positive punishment means to add an undesirable stimulus to decrease a behavior. Some examples include 1. A parent scolds a child for drawing on the walls, aiming to reduce the behavior. 2. Placing a child in timeout for misbehaving to discourage the behavior. 3. Giving a student detention for disruptive behavior in class. Negative punishment involves removing a desirable stimulus to decrease an unwanted behavior. Some examples include 1. Revoking a teenager's driving privileges for breaking curfew. 2. Imposing a monetary fine for littering, which removes the person's money. 3. Taking away a child's playtime or recess as a consequence for misbehavior. One point I need to make is that negative reinforcement is not the same thing as punishment. Next, I am going to talk about the two different types of reinforcement schedules. First, there is continuous reinforcement. This type of reinforcement technique involves providing a reward or reinforcer every time a desired behavior occurs. On the other hand, partial reinforcement is a learning technique where a desired response is only reinforced part of the time rather than every time it occurs. Out of the two, partial reinforcement is more effective than continuous reinforcement. This is because research has shown that continuous reinforcement results in subjects responding slower to rewards compared to when partial reinforcement schedules are used. Continuous reinforcement also has a high rate of extinction. Next, I will explain what primary and secondary reinforcers. Primary reinforcers are biological stimuli that motivates behavior by satisfying an organism's basic survival needs. Examples include food, water, and sleep. Secondary reinforcers are of no inherent value and only become reinforcing when linked with a primary reinforcer, such as money, which can be used to acquire food or shelter. Now, there are four types of schedule of reinforcement. First, there is fixed ratio. A fixed ratio is the number of times an action must be done in order to receive a award. For example, a child must do 5 chores before receiving an allowance, so the child conducts 5 chores knowing they will receive their compensation. Next, we have fixed interval. A fixed interval is where reinforcement is provided after a fixed amount of time elapses. For example, a classroom of students earning recess after sitting quietly for 5 minutes during read out loud. Then there is a variable ratio, which happens when a response is reinforced after an unpredictable number of responses. For example, playing the slot machines or participating in games of chance. Finally, variable interval rewards a behavior after an unpredictable amount of time has passed. For example, someone waiting for an elevator. I will now give the results from 2 recent psychological experiments that involved using operant conditioning. The first experiment applies operant conditioning with pain modulation. This experiment showed that pain modulation can be induced by classical and operant conditioning, and mechanisms of attention and context change are involved in instrumental learning. The second experiment uses operant conditioning with placebo hypoalgesia. The results of this experiment showed placebo hypoalgesia was induced by operant conditioning only in the experimental groups, with social and token-based reinforcement compared to the control groups. Well, this is my lesson about what operant conditioning is. I hope you have a better understanding of it. Have a great rest of your day, guys.